And finally, this is the last one of these 2 days for us, as far as I'm concerned, for the English session. We were basically discussing whether or not this session should be about the good old rum from Guadeloupe, but now we are going to stick to hydrogen subject. I would like to thank all the courageous people who are here in the audience for this last session that is going to be a little bit freestyle. But first of all, I would like to share all together your feeling and your impression, what you have learned from those 2 days here on this exhibition. Who wants to take the first of all, I'm sorry, please introduce yourself. Sibylle.
Ladies first, Sibylle, please.
Okay, thank you, Bertrand.
Closer.
So my name is Sibylle Weiler. I'm an energy lawyer at Bird & Bird office here in Paris, and I'm coming from a long experience from the renewable energy development, M&A, and financing field. And I've been steering now for quite a while the hydrogen group, international hydrogen group of Bird & Bird. So this is the reason why I'm here today. This gives me the possibility to compare also what is happening in other jurisdictions and see what hydrogen work trends and markets are in other countries. So yeah, thank you.
And my name is Miko Meret, so I'm an adjunct lecturer on hydrogen markets and geopolitics. So I'm just like you, I tend to have a more comparativist approach to hydrogen, especially when it comes to policy making and to market analysis. And apart from that, I'm also part of the steering committee of the Hydrogen Task Force, which is a joint private initiative created about a year ago by France Hydrogène and MEDEF International.
Okay, and I'm going to do what I have not done since the beginning of these 2 days, to present myself. I just forgot to do it. My name is Bertrand Chauvet. I am the co-founder and president of SEIA Consulting, which is dedicated to hydrogen for about 10 years, and a board member of France Hydrogène. Okay, thanks. I come back again with my question, initial one, to launch this debate. What have you learned from those 2 days here?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I was here yesterday and I'm here today. I'm really impressed to see how professional this event is and yeah, how many good talks are possible. It's big but not too big. I think this is something which is very nice, and yeah, I'm delighted to see how this develops and gets really professional event of this quality.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I wasn't there for the very first Hyvolution events. You said some 10 years ago.
It was in 2013 when I created this event.
Exactly. You were the creator, definitely. And what's funny is that ever since the beginning yesterday morning, all the people I've met have said what you've just said. It's incredible how Hyvolution has become that professional. It's a real trade show. It's no longer some small event with the French hydrogen community trying to structure itself and present itself to the world. Here they are talking to everyone. And it was amazing also to notice that up to 15% of the attendance on this edition of Hyvolution is coming from abroad. Despite COVID, despite everything, the restrictions and so on, 15% are coming from abroad. So that's actually great, and it shows something. It shows that France is now on the international scene, at least the European one, but we've seen also people coming from Canada, from Morocco, so not just Europeans coming to Korea, of course, coming here to Hyvolution to discuss where the French community is about and how ready they are.
Yeah, probably it has something to do with the announcement of a certain number of hydrogen strategies around the world in the past 2 years. Of course, this is giving a big signal. Behind this signal, there is a number of economic players who say, well, maybe it's really time to position here. Well, if you can summarize what happened in the last 2 years.
Okay, in a nutshell, I think one figure tells the whole story. In 2017, you had less than 10 countries in the world that had either a roadmap or a strategy or like an official document of that sort. And now we're like 4 years later, we're in November 2021 almost, we have more than 40 countries, 4 times the number of countries we had. And the in terms of quality, these strategies, roadmaps that have been published in the past couple of years, they are much more detailed, much more precise. The objectives, the targets are much higher as well, much more ambitious. So it's, of course, going through the roof compared to what we were at 4 years ago.
Okay. Sibyl, you have a certain experience in the past with the emergence of the renewable markets, right? Do you see some similarities between the two phenomena, or is this so different?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's very important to have a look what all the countries do, but also to have a look what has happened in the past. And I think today we are in a position in the hydrogen market like at the beginning of the renewables. And there are some lessons learned which should be carefully kept in mind in order to avoid. I could take an example what happened in the Spanish market at a certain moment. We are all talking about subsidiary schemes for hydrogen. So this has to be drafted carefully in order to avoid bubbles like we had in Spain, which are counterproductive. We can also see what happened with respect to technology. If the European technology is not sufficiently supported, there might be a risk that it goes to other countries. And this has also been seen in the PV module field and should be avoided with respect to hydrogen. I think France, Europe should have a really key role also from the technology side. And this is also what we see in some of the national hydrogen strategies.
You want to comment on that, I think.
Yeah, not a comment, but just complementary element. It's really funny, amazing rather, to see that whether you talk to someone in the private sector or in the public sector or in administration or even a politician all across Europe, and in France it's true as well, the main message is we've learned from the mistakes of renewables, especially from wind and from solar in the past 10 years. We've learned from these mistakes, and what we know now, or what we aim to achieve, is avoid making the same mistakes. This idea that we've made mistakes and we want to avoid them, it's front and center in all the discussions we've been having today and yesterday, but also in general.
Yeah, and considering that when we talk about strategy for hydrogen, we are talking about two things. First, the transformation of the energy system, which is one, and the other one is the full industry that is behind that we need to develop in a very competitive environment. Do the various strategies that you see around the world reflect those two elements at the same time?
Absolutely, and there's a third element I would add to that, which is building a taxonomy. And that's going to, of course, you're going to build up on that, so I'm not going to detail. And there's a fourth element as well, which is making sure that the general public understands that it's important. This idea of public acceptation, consumer behaviors, this idea, these elements, they're key to actually making sure that the targets set in those strategies can be met at all. So we've seen that in European countries, we've seen that in many countries across the world, and a country which is ambitious regarding its targets from an industrial point of view, but overlooks or doesn't really detail in strategy the strategies that they can put in place to actually make sure that the general public and the local elected officials as well, not just at the national level, but in the regions or municipalities, how you can bring them to the table. The countries who have overlooked this aspect, they're lagging behind now already.
So, yes, please.
I would just like to add something. What we need also is that regulatory framework, stability, and investments. It's about the public, but it's also about where is the money going. And I see that like on my everyday's work. We have now a lot of money available going into the hydrogen and interested in the hydrogen sector, and this needs still a kind of regulatory framework stability in order to realize all those projects.
With this perspective on the legal issues, there are two domains. There's the public one, the regulation and so forth, and there are the private contract that needs to be done between partners, industrial partners. As a lawyer, what do you think are the key things we need to pay attention to?
Well, it's very important. I mean, a lot of hydrogen projects need joint ventures or partnership agreements, and those are not just simple piece of paper, but should be drafted very carefully in order to see exactly what each party has to deliver. What are you doing with IP rights, how you are going to structure and eventually also avoid all kind of dispute and dispute resolution mechanisms. So this is something really which should be done carefully, because we have a lot of opportunities, but there are also kind of legal risks to avoid.
And here again, the lessons from the past are still valid for handling this new stuff?
Well, I'm not sure if I would say the lessons from the past, because I think in hydrogen we have a bigger need for joint ventures than we had perhaps for the renewables. I think it's more important in the hydrogen world perhaps to have that than in the renewables.
Yeah, and I could say that by the way, on the local territories, most of the projects are often a sort of partnership between collectivities, local authorities, and industry also. There are lots of issues here at stake. Please, Mika.
Yeah, that's very true from a domestic point of view. If we look at it, and if we look at the hydrogen sector from an international point of view, there's even a bigger need for limiting these legal and regulatory frameworks risks. Because if you want to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen, like for cheap, say in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, Egypt, or Chile, and you want to bring them this hydrogen to Europe, say Germany or France or whatever, if you don't have international standards, if you don't have international certificates of origin, if you don't have like basically a standardized taxonomy altogether, at least at the European level, and if possibly from a multilateral level, it's not going to work. As long as if you don't have that, you cannot have an international supply chain for hydrogen, or at least you can have like contracts between a couple of companies or between a company and a local administration, but you won't really have a market per se. And that's one of the key elements that's missing in many countries' strategies, working on these international standardizations and taxonomy.
Yeah. By the way, taxonomy for some of the experts here, we all know what it is about, but I'm pretty sure that many people don't know nothing about taxonomy. Can you be a bit more specific about that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this might be a major revolution in the European world as from January 2022. Big players will have to report on their investments, and each activity will be classified and verified, and then for example, lenders or funds can say, okay, I invest in products which are taxonomy aligned. Or also big players, but it's not only big players, because there is currently revision of directives in order to integrate also smaller entities into that taxonomy assessment. And what is also important is that for smaller entities, big players might ask the smaller entities to be also taxonomy aligned. So what does that mean? There are 6 criteria to be observed with respect to environmental sustainable activities. There's also an aspect of social labor rights to be observed, and then we have all those technical criteria on a European standard. And this is where the money will go, because a lot of people will have to communicate that they are having a taxonomy aligned activity or investments.
It's a European concept. Right.
It's kind of a European concept, definitely, and it's actually, I should say, a German concept, in fact, because the fact that German entities went to many countries like Chile, Morocco, Australia, Nigeria, and so many, they've brought this taxonomy with them, so to speak, or at least
It's not German, it's Greek at the basis, but it's a kind of classification of activities. And what do we want to achieve? We want to avoid greenwashing. So people should stop to say, yeah, I'm doing a sustainable investment or activity, but those are criteria not to make life more complicated, but to give a certainty about what is really sustainable and what is not.
Exactly. The need for a hydrogen taxonomy was first born in Germany and in Japan. The idea was simple. If you want to get out of nuclear power, and if you want to build a hydrogen economy to some extent, you need to show people that this is not a greenwashing effort. And to do that, you need to have criterions to show that this is not greenwashing because of this, that, and that reason. And in Japan, we've had this effort around the hydrogen taxonomy starting in 2013, and in Germany, it wasn't far after, 2015-16. And then it, of course, kind of influenced a lot of players, including people in Brussels at the European Commission. And what is very interesting now is that, I mean, there's one example which is almost like a caricature of this debate on taxonomy. It's the hydrogen rainbow, like all those colors. It's amazing, because a lot of people are talking about green hydrogen, and we see just for green hydrogen so many different definitions. For some people, it's just hydrogen that is produced out of renewables. But what does that mean? Renewables. Do we count, for example, biomethane as a product of green hydrogen, for example? I mean, so it's great. It's great to see how yellow hydrogen are now so confusing, because there are so many definitions of yellow hydrogen that now, if you talk to me about yellow hydrogen, I would know that you're not an expert, because it's not possible to talk about yellow hydrogen. So this is a caricature, but this is absolutely key. And this element was answered to by the European Commission and by the French strategy and by many other European strategies as well. When the French, for example, or the European Commission says, you're either low carbon or carbonated or renewable hydrogen, it says something different, and it unlocks the possibility of having strict certificates of origins with strict auditing and so on and so forth. So this is still ongoing. It's not there exactly yet, but it's been a multi-year effort at this point.
Yeah, it's a very interesting debate. Taxonomy is something that everyone needs to understand, and of course there's a lot of lobbying issues behind that and economic interest, of course, for the countries who have let's say a nuclear mix, and countries who don't, and whatever. We talked about the similarities. What about the differences in those different strategies across the world? Have you identified some major differences between the strategies?
Yeah, definitely we have differences. I could not give you a short picture of all the differences because then we would stay here for the night. But I might focus just, for example, on France and Germany, and just to see there are a lot of similitudes. I mean, France did choose actually that European low carbon, carbon and renewable definition, although we still need to have the exact carbon figures. What we can also underline is, for example, in the German strategy, it's clear that Germany will be an import market, whereas France is clearly concentrating on exporting hydrogen. And this is also something which you can observe in Germany. You have a lot of partnerships in order to prepare that kind of importation of hydrogen, less than France, who is more tabling on exporting hydrogen on a long way.
I would say there are three types of countries, definitely. Like, Germany is an import market. Spain, Portugal are export market. France, I'm not sure France will be an export market. What I think is that France will be able to export some electrolyzers, for example. We'll be able to export some fuel cells, for example. I'm not sure France will be able first to meet its own hydrogen demand first. but at least we will try to do that. And that's my third category, so to speak, those countries who want to use hydrogen to increase their energy security, or at least what they perceive as some element of energy sovereignty. And France has a lot of potential in that regard, not just because, well, we have some very interesting potential vis-a-vis wind power in the northwestern part of the country, or solar possibilities, solar PV in the southern part of the countries, or biomethane possibly, biomass possibly, or geothermal, or hydropower, but what's
Offshore?
Or offshore, absolutely, offshore wind, definitely. But what I'm thinking about here, one of my hats, notably at Sciences Po, is to work on the French overseas territories. And definitely France, like the UK, like Denmark, like Norway, they have these territories in other parts of the world that can be leveraged as well to actually produce hydrogen and build not international hydrogen supply chains, but actually domestic supply chains, but with territories located very far away in the world. So definitely, I don't know if we will ever see a barrel, if you allow me the expression, a barrel of green ammonia coming in Montoire de Bretagne or in Le Havre or in Dunkerque from French Polynesia. I don't know. But on paper, it is a possibility. And what's very interesting here is that there's a major difference between these three types of countries. But in the European Union context, there's a huge complementarity between all of these players. And it's also true between Europe and the post-Soviet area. Think Ukraine, think Uzbekistan, think, of course, the Russian Arctic. There's also a complementarity with the Maghreb and the Middle Eastern region. So definitely, for example, the twice 40 gigawatts strategy that Hydrogen Europe put out in 2020 actually builds up on that. So it's very interesting to see how these complementarities from a geoeconomic point of view can be leveraged and are being leveraged, at least on paper, and now have to be translated into actual markets. But to do that, you will need lawyers, you will need auditors, you need all these people. Without them, there's no contract, there's no possibility for these international supply chains and this complementarity.
A proof that this debate could continue for hours. We are already beyond timing. we have not seen the time going away. So I would like you to put on the table a last word, and that is the closing word. And I shut my mouth.
Yeah, very short. Once again, I'm originally coming from the renewable sector, and all I would like to say is we had like almost 20 years of the renewable energy development, and for hydrogen we can't wait another 20 years to be on a mature phases. So this has to be very quick and yeah, really accelerating. But I think this. What we can see here gives good hope for such acceleration.
Well, as Sibyl has exactly said what I was planning to say, I will say something different. I want to congratulate you. I want to congratulate Pierre and the whole team. Yeah, you, Mr. Moderator today, because you guys created Hyvolution and you've made it all together over the years what it is today. And actually, if you want to have a hydrogen market in France or in Western Europe, you need trade shows, events like this, who actually bring people all together in one place for a couple of days. So definitely thank you guys, because you are absolutely instrumental in making this a possibility as well.
This event without you is nothing. Thank you very much, and have a great day, end of the day. Thank you very much.